allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Push Kate in the door. All right, any changes to the agenda?
No, Madam Acting Mayor.
Any
Motion to approve agenda.
Second.
motion by Kate, second by Josh. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And just to note, this was the revised agenda that was provided to the council prior to the meeting.
All right, and we have no presentations, proclamations, or acknowledgements. Anyone here for public comment?
Somebody walked out there.
Sorry.
All right, we'll close public comment. All right, any questions on anything on the consent agenda?
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Kate, second by Bryce. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, no public hearings, and then we're on to general business. Rich?
All right, I'm going to try to move through this since I know you still have business. So we're going to talk about development-related infrastructure projects and what we see happening in the engineering department. And this is kind of predicated on the idea that a fairly large water and sewer user comes to town, whoever it might be. So the purpose, we're going to talk about the scope and timing of potential impacts from a large user. Give you a heads up on the various types of increased engineering activity that would be associated with that type of event, how the different activities would be funded, and then we are going to be importantly asking for pre-authorization for some items to avoid any delays in commencing work. So if something gets triggered the day after a council meeting, we don't want to, if we can not wait 2 weeks or 3 weeks for the next meeting. The notice to proceed would be from city staff, so we wouldn't just start working on your say-so, but you'd be setting the trigger so that they could pull out. And then finally, for each of these, I think there's 8 different items. I'll give you a quick description, an idea of what we think the cost might be if we can predict it, the schedule, and the purpose. The whole idea of all this, well begun is half done. We want to hit the ground running if something happens so that we aren't wishing we'd hurried up at the end of the project. So these are the projects we'll be asking for pre-authorization on, and we're hoping that would happen tonight. First would be the Pillsbury Lift Station and Force Main improvement. I'm sure you all recall we built a new lift station down at the corner of Pillsbury and County Road 2. It has a force main and gravity sewer up to the edge of the Parker I-35 project. We also built a force main under DuPont all the way up to 250th and connected to the Met Council. Should a project come through, we would need to complete the electrical and mechanical elements of that lift station. And actually, there's some mechanical equipment on the force main that we would also install. There's air release valves that let air into and out of the pipe as it's operating. We didn't put those valves or pumps or controls in because we didn't know how long that might be sitting unused. We also didn't know what kind of use might be generated. We sized the pipe as best we could for a fairly large range, but pumps are a different matter. You want to be careful not to oversize or undersize. So that is something that needs to happen. We think the design fees and bidding and construction would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $40,000. That would be to arrange electrical service into this system, pick the pumps, order the pumps, get the pumps bid, installed, tested, and the air valves on that system. It also is going to involve how do you get a standby generator to that site. We're hearing some very long lead times for generators, over a year. So we want to not just rely on buying a brand new one, but do we have any other options, whether we have existing standby generators or the leftover one that we replaced behind City Hall. We still own it. Can we fit that to work? So there'll be some work sorting out how we make sure that that thing is always backed up. The schedule, what we're hearing is that this could be needed as soon as the third quarter of 2023. The delays I worry about, it could take months to get electrical service to a site. We have a winter intervening in there, and like I mentioned, that standby generator lead time. So this is something, once we think it's due, we don't want to wait to get started. Next item would be to flush and/or flow test trunk water mains. We have two trunk water main segments we're talking about here. This one was built back in 2008, something, 9. It extends along County Road 2 from Dakota. It's at the edge of the roadway in the ditch, or well behind the curb, out to Idaho. That's a 16-inch water main. There's a valve here that is off. So that water main's full of water, but it's not pressurized, not operable. No one's served off of it. But now that this development here, and this isn't necessarily large user related, but it's similar work to other work that's large user related, so we're suggesting this be lumped in. What needs to happen here so that this Ridgeview Heights loop can be activated, we have to put some hydrants on the end of this, flush it out, and do some flow testing to make sure there's no problems. And also we gather data from that we use in modeling the rest of the system, and then that can be put into service. So that's one segment of trunk water main. The other one is, of course, the extension we completed last year out to Park I-35. We've got a 16-inch trunk. Same situation, full of water, ready to go, but it's off. It's never been flushed, so it's got a bunch of chlorinated water that's been sitting in it now for a year. So what needs to happen before they can use it, it needs to be flushed. But also what we'd like to do is do some flow testing so we can see if it's performing the way my calculations said it would. And if there's not, we need to figure out why. I would expect it will, but it's just a good idea, I think, to check that out. We may only flow test it in the near future and wait until there's some development here with some ponds that we can discharge. There's a lot of water. I was trying to think if I could swear, but I can't.
Do we ask questions now or when you're
You
done?
may ask a question whenever you like.
So I have a question. If we flow test flush this out to Park I-35 and God forbid something does not perform on the other side, what happens with that since it will not be used?
I would retire
But I mean,
immediately.
but as far as
That's on the record. That is on the record.
As far as flow testing it and flushing it, will that do any damage to the tubes?
Nope.
Okay.
We have filled and pressure tested this line. We know it's not gonna blow apart or
Okay.
something. But there's a hill, for example. There could be some air trap near the top of the pipe. We have a way to get that out.
Okay.
So this isn't, I mean, I would just like to see water blown out the end for my own sake.
Right, but if
I'm
nobody
honest.
connects to the other end of it, it will not do any damage
No.
to,
No.
since we've,
No.
okay.
No. But we also get good data when we do those, so when these guys come and say, we need 3,000 GPM for fire protection, we will know we have or we'll say, no, we only got 2,500, we need to build a tower, or whatever.
Right.
There's just, it's useful information for those types of big users that might have high fire flow demands.
Okay.
That's, I mean, there's multiple reasons, but that's really the main one.
Would we use that flow data then also to do modeling for expansion of the system in that area?
So that'll tell us with PVC pipe what our coefficients of loss might be, that we would, we can calibrate the digital model we have and make it more improve it, yeah. So, and it's relatively short duration. You run that hydrant for, 5 minutes and water goes everywhere and then you shut it off. Flushing, you're gonna run that for a few hours and there'll be a lot of water. So if we have ponds or some other way to manage that so we don't erode the fields and cause a problem, we may wait until they've done some work out there and extended pipes. But at a minimum, we'd probably wait till after crops are out. And I already talked about the reasons, so I'm gonna move on. Water treatment plant and well ramp-up protocols. Basically, you've got a water treatment plant that's generally running somewhere between 300 and a half a million gallons of water a day, fairly steady. You get dry weather, that'll go up as people water. You have some weird thing and you might have a spike for a day or two. I think the highest we've ever pumped, and that was a really unusual event, was a little over 1 million gallons. But for the most part, we're in that 400, let's just say 400,000 or 500,000.
That must have been the day I did my hockey rink.
Probably, yeah,
Yeah.
thanks. You paid for it, by the way.
Yes, I did.
So with a bigger project, you could double that base flow or triple it to 1 million gallons a day routinely, or 1.5 million, and that's not on a peak day. A peak day could jump up to close to 2. So when you make a big change like that and it's ongoing all the time going forward, you want to make sure everything is dialed in and you know what to expect when you turn those knobs and water starts flowing. How does it affect the chemical feed? Backwash frequency. Do you have enough guys around for whatever it might be? So the idea was we'd go through with a team of specialists with Corey and whatever people he wants and look at each element, talk about, well, let's see, to stress test this, we should do that, and then write a report. So it's really just a diagnosis, a big checkup to make sure we know what to expect when we start doubling production or tripling production.
So, can I ask another question?
Yeah.
Because when I was reading it, where is it? Applying to the Minnesota Department of Health for an amended permit to increase annual withdrawals. What is our current annual withdrawal limit?
I think your withdrawal limit's right about 100 million gallons a year.
And what are we thinking we need to go to said provider comes on 35?
Phase 1, we would probably double and a half that.
Okay.
And phase 2, maybe triple and a half that.
And is our current water treatment plant big enough to accommodate that?
Yes, we can handle that. What happens with your, and that's kind of beyond the scope of this talk, but in a nutshell, we can handle whatever this project might bring, phase 1 and phase 2, but it doesn't leave you much room for growth for very long for your continued background growth.
Okay.
So you have to replace that lost capacity if you want to continue going.
All right.
You mentioned withdrawal permit. I skipped it, but that is actually probably the most important part of this. That you're already bumping up against that annual limit with nothing. So for sure, regardless of whether you get an applicant, that's something we probably need to do pretty soon. The trick is, what do you ask for? Another 50 million gallons because you don't have anything big expected, or do you double and a half it? So that's why this one is in that more urgent category of pre-authorization. This is an hourly thing. The folks there would just bill their time. We estimate it'd be in the 10 to 15 grand range. And this is all about meeting your increased base and peak production, but not losing water quality. If we start getting pink water in the system, we don't want that type of thing. So, for some chemical imbalance, or if there's some surprise about, boy, when we're going to backwash with this much water, we need 3 guys, or whatever it might. I'm just making things up, but I think you get the idea. So the rest of these are just information-only projects. There are things I would expect will happen if this user comes in. Just wanted to talk a little bit about development plan review versus site plan review. So the Park I-35 development plan review, presumably Ryan Companies would submit a plan that shows some sort of a road and utility and stormwater management layout for the whole site, even if parts of it are going to be future outlots or whatever. And so we do a review of that along with city staff, looking at road connections and road design and grades and stormwater and utility, all that stuff, just to make sure that the layout provides safe, because a lot of that infrastructure will be owned by the city. They'll dedicate right away and put a road in it, and it'll be ours. So we want things that last a long time, that are easy to maintain, that they're safe, and they work the way they're supposed to. There's usually a fairly quick turnaround, but all that engineering time gets billed back to the developer. Similar to this, but on a smaller scale, there will be individual sites within that development that may have their own driveway entrance and stormwater ponds or parking lot layout, stuff like that, that we'd look at. In these cases, we're less focused on the infrastructure as a city asset, but is it compatible with the surrounding uses? Is the driveway wide enough to get the trucks in without backing people up on the city street? Does it meet the state and local stormwater regulations? So it's very similar, but it's on a different scale. It's kind of like, almost like reviewing a housing subdivision and then looking at the individual building permits. And again, that time gets billed back to that individual applicant. Water storage improvement. So it's pretty inherent in the name, but we're talking about water that's ready to use for firefighting or to meet demand spikes, or if there's some sort of surface interruption, a water main break or something, you have water in the air that can still feed that area without being connected directly to the treatment plant. This storage can be elevated, a water tower, that's best, it's expensive. It can also be ground level or just below ground with pumps and dedicated generators. That's less best and less costly. We really should have and look first for elevated storage. We want that to be located near high fire demand areas. We had fun with this statement this week, water gets tired if it has to run too far. So, I'll explain. Imagine now you've had your sandwich, and I've got nice, thick, cold Dairy Queen malts, and I'm going to give you each one. And I'm going to give you each a straw. One straw is the size of a pencil. The other straw is the diameter of your thumb. You are going to grab the big one, because you know already from drinking malts in your life that it's easier through a big straw. And that's because of head loss. There's less head loss with that big straw. If we built a water tower out on that end of town to fight a fire way on that end of town, it has to run through all that pipe. It's like taking that straw and making it longer and longer. It gets hard to suck after a while. So that's why we want to keep those towers kind of distributed and spread out, and ideally, especially for some large fire demands, tower near that. So it doesn't really get tired, but there is definitely a difference in the length of the pipes from that elevated storage place. New well. Wells last longer and they perform better if you're not pulling on them too hard. There's not a big empty vault of water down 400 feet below the ground. It's granular soil or rock, and the water's in those pores. So if you start pulling too hard and moving that water through those pores and rock too fast, it starts to bring gravel and sand with it, and that gets caught on the screens. So you want to be careful not to just pump as much as you possibly can, because it may not last very long. So more supply wells allow us to increase our firm supply, and when we talk about firm supply, we count things with your largest well out of service, that's your firm supply. And a lot of insurance stuff is rated on that. You can't count all your wells. So more is better, and they also provide that resiliency and redundancy. If something goes wrong with one, you've still got the others. And we think if a user like this says yes, you should definitely identify your next well location and preserve that location. That'll save time if you need it. Decide, and you'll cut a half a year off trying to figure out where to put it. You already got that sorted out. Also gives you a chance to jump off opportunities. Oh, we're going to be putting in some water main. Hey, why don't we run some over this well site? Or, oh, we're getting a grant for something and we can use it for extending water tools. So that those types of things are enabled when you've done that homework and set the table. Treatment plant expansion. I mentioned, I think, maybe I didn't mention, the filters in your plant that remove the actual iron and manganese and radium, by the way. That's what's limiting right now your max day capacity. There's only so much water you can push through those filters before it starts to break through or not go through fast enough. Your current plant can meet your current peak demands. That's that over 1 million gallon a day you're currently seeing, plus roughly tripling your current base production. If we call that, just for big round numbers, say it's 500,000, and you triple that to 1.5 plus the 1, we can run water a little faster through the filters and meet that, but not for long. But even just meeting all that, you're still going to continue to grow. So like I was explaining earlier, unless you expand the plant, at some point, we think it can be after phase 2, but at some point you'll need to do that so you can continue to grow. And so this project would be all the stuff we went through, maybe a little simpler because now you actually have more options and you have an actual plant site. But we spent a lot of years figuring out where to even put this plant, how big it should be, what it should be, what kind of plant it should be. And you'll go through some of that same stuff again. And then you start designing it, and then you bid it and build it. So it's going to be a very lengthy process. And so just being aware of that's out there, that you can't just build and bring these users to accountable impact. I think that covers it. I think you get the idea. And that leads me to the last slide.
Or who has the third question? Sorry. No, I'm just kidding.
The answer to that was Kate. Any questions?
Do you need a motion?
So we are looking for a motion to pre-authorize the work identified in the
For the 3 projects.
the 3 projects identified in the memo. Basically that, because if we have the user come and these things need to be done, I would authorize them as they need to be done.
Motion.
Well, what's the budget impact on these 3 items?
So the lift station, I think, was about 40, and that would come out of the sewer fund or anything left in that project fund for the I-35 utility extension.
Yep.
The water main would come out of the water fund. Water main and the treatment plant review would come out of the water fund.
8 to 12 and 10 to 15.
Yep.
Motion to approve, how do you want me to word this? Motion to approve contingent authorization request projects, number 1, number 2, and number 3,
As identified.
as
in the-
identified.
In the memo? You just read the recommendation too.
Oh, there you go. See, I'm not down there. Okay, anyways, motion to approve authorized engineering services described in items 1, 2, and 3 above on a project-by-project basis, subject to written notice to proceed by the city administrator to the city engineer when the administrator determines the service should begin.
Motion by Kate,
Second.
second by Bryce. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
on to reports. Administration.
Just a quick item, and it'll also be in a upcoming council update, and I'll probably talk about it in individual meetings with council members. A couple things are coming up. Night to Night is the first Tuesday in August.
It's already here.
It's already here.
So just to get it on your calendars if you choose that you want to participate.
First
And-
Tuesday?
Yep, and then we have the community picnic, August 26th,
27th,
27th,
yes.
that Saturday?
Saturday.
Yep,
What time is that
27th,
at?
sorry. And
What time is the picnic?
I will be sending out details on it.
Okay.
I'm waiting for Linda to get me specific times. Typically, we've run from like 11 till 1 or 2 o'clock for the period. And then, so we're looking, offer for elected officials to come down and be ambassadors to the community, but we also are always looking for people that can stuff hot dogs in buns and stock chips and things like that. So any help that we can get would be appreciated. If you are looking to help, we are looking for a firm commitment. Last year, a lot of our tentative help disappeared, and we ran the whole event with only 6 people. It was a little dicey at times.
What day is the community picnic?
27th.
August?
Yes.
My people would quit dying, I could commit.
Goodness sake.
2 funerals in a row.
I'm sorry
You're
to
gonna
hear
send
that.
something out so I have time to check my work calendar, correct?
Absolutely. I'll have something coming out next week.
Okay, so
Oh,
August
man.
2nd is Night to Unite, and the 27th is the picnic. Alright. Anything additional from Public Works?
No.
Chief?
Just want to report, we've identified and we're well into the background, psychological, medical testing of our new candidate, Derek Irwin. There's a possibility he might start either at the end of this month or very early next month. Fastest hiring process and start date, if it goes through, that we've had since I've been here in 3 years. We were very fortunate, especially with only 4 applicants. Derek again, Lakeville resident, 4 children, coming here from Scott County Jail, where he, prior to that, worked in the Hennepin County Jail. A great amount of experience, so we're really excited to get him going into our field training program. We continue to beef up our officer safety equipment. Eden Prairie Police Department donated ballistic rated helmets for our officers. Those along with our shields, and then also we have ballistic rated plates for our officers. We're gonna get into vests. We'll be really ramped up on our officer safety equipment. In August, we are doing a hostile event training for the police department at the elementary school, working in conjunction with them, more of a tabletop physical location familiarization event for our officers. Many of them have all been there, but not into all the nooks and crannies of the location in the school and threat assessment issues that we have with it. So we're doing that, and
Is that like a scenario-based training?
no.
Or like informational type thing?
Yeah, familiarization is what I like to say. There's a fire truck, or a dump truck hit a pole and started on fire out in the county, just outside the city, so you're gonna hear a lot of that for the next couple minutes. In 2012, I did the largest Carver County, my team and I put on largest Carver County active shooter training, scenario-based, and the hundreds of hours and hundreds of people that go through that is just too much for a department our size to put on. I mean, it was getting close to being too big for what we did. So I feel there's a lot more value in a small tabletop-based, just our team, seeing the school, all the hiding spots, all the locations, and then do some tactical, just in our team, response will be much better. And our officers will get a lot more out of it. I was on a high priority call just to kind of give you some information about a hostile event, how different it would be than what you might have seen nationally in Uvalde. I was on a burglary in progress call, first one there. My backup and this is coming code when I asked for priority help, was 17 minutes out. So I was by myself. So just to give you an idea, if one of our officers are by themselves when we would have a hostile event at the school, it would be that one officer for 10 to 15 minutes before backup. In that, saying that, our officers know the expectations and the training, and the reason I've been trying to ramp up with ballistic vests, heavier plates, better rifles, shields, is because I know we're gonna be by ourselves and we're gonna be charging into that by ourselves. So, it's something to think about, and that's why when we train to have a lot of people there and go through these scenarios, it's not gonna be what you've seen on those videos that were just released where you have 30 people standing in the hallway waiting to go in. It's gonna be one person. So that's the type of real world kind of stuff we're dealing with, and it changes your perspective. It's not like what you see on TV, so some of the things, and Tom is well aware of this, I've been working with him as well, is upgrading our capabilities as an individual officer, meaning, I hate to say it this way, but bigger guns that can go through steel doors and broader windows and reach out farther, and just because so often of the times we're by ourselves or just two of us. And so when you see some of those things come through, that's the type of stuff, since I've gotten here, I've been trying to beef up, is our capability. So we're not sitting there on the news going, they just sat there and did nothing because it was just one person. So that's kind of what we're faced with, and
I don't want to go too deep in the weeds with this question and have a really long discussion, but has there been any internal talks about the number of law enforcement that we currently have in our community, about some type of community response or action in the case of law enforcement who are off duty in their homes in the city?
well, that would be a term. I think you all well know our community enough to know that there would be a self-response of a whole lot of people with a whole lot of firepower, you know, I mean, that would be a lot of law enforcement, but the logistical, legal, moral, ethical response of that would, it would just be too much to take. I mean,
Sure.
we do have, I estimate 40 to 50 at least, federal, state, local, jurisdictional, county law enforcement that live in town. I mean, you all know all the squad cars that are parked in the streets.
If not more.
And, but, and as a matter of fact, very just side note, on that burglary call where I'm standing on a door waiting for my backup, I looked behind me and I looked another way and there's two gentlemen, and both of them are law enforcement for another agency that you brought that up. Obviously, they didn't respond, but they were keeping an eye on me just in case something happened. So I mean, that, I know where you're coming from, but it just wouldn't work. And when a call like that goes out, it would take that 10, 15 minutes, but then there would be a lot. So I just want you to know that even though we're small and we, you know, aren't big in numbers, we're really trying to bolster our capabilities. And, you know, you might look at some of these shields and stuff that I get for my officers and go, God, we'll never use that. Well, I hope so. But the point being is that if we have to, we have to, and you need them, you can't wait. And Uvalde shows that, I mean, they had 30 to 40 people there in tactical equipment within minutes, but no action. We like to think we'll be the other way. We'd only have one person, but there'd be a lot of action going on right away because we have the capability and we have the training. So, that being said, Night to Unite, we're also collecting, I'm excited to say, partnering with Southern Valley Alliance. We're taking donations from those parties. The flyer went out with that information, gas cards, hotel voucher, gift cards, hygiene products. There's a list on that flyer that we're donating. So we're gonna be putting that out as well, and I'm gonna work with Tom to do a separate, a week or two before, and just say, hey, our officers are gonna be collecting those things for Southern Valley Alliance and victims of domestic assault. So that's new this year. I'm excited about that. Other than that, unless you have questions, I can be done, so we can move on.
Alright. Engineering, anything else?
I'm
Community development?
I don't have any updates.
No updates from Quick Trip yet?
We're still
I
planning
mean,
next
if they're
year.
gonna, if they're realistically building in 2023,
Mhm.
or they say they're opening in 2023 or building in 2023?
They'll pull building permit in the spring of 2023.
Gotcha.
So opening probably late summer.
Yeah,
They tell us about a 6-month build time.
yeah. They have it down to within days, so it's,
I feel like they just
It really-
pop up
well,
out of
or,
nowhere.
like
yeah.
daisies.
Like in New Prague, they just, poof.
Yeah.
Dandelions, yeah.
Alright, parks?
If it wasn't in Jessica's update, there's a planned open house during 1990, might have been, at the park in Boulder Heights. It's kind of a tentative plan at this point, just to get feedback from the community or the residents in the area. Let them know that we're starting to plan for that park development.
Council knows that usually we'll highlight some park or park improvement that we had during the year. We don't have one this year, but we're hoping to use that event to drive attendance at this neighborhood open house.
So we had, our public works went and kind of tried to clean up some of that site yesterday and mow it, and it looks pretty bad, but we'll try to make something. Did.
CCEC meets on Tuesday. So anything for that? Scale? I know there's no July meeting. So anything for an executive committee or Thursday? 5:35?
No meeting in July or August, we don't meet again until September.
Any discussion by council? Motion by Kate,
Second.
second by Josh, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.